I built a backyard food system that almost runs itself. Most backyard gardens create more work than food. You till, you water, you weed, you fertilize, you fight pests. And at the end of the season, you've spent more time and money than anything you could have just bought at the store. I wanted the opposite. So, I built a system that feeds us with less labor, less cost, and less dependence on the store. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it works, why I built it this way, every mistake I made getting here, and what you can do to build your own version starting this week. This isn't a garden, it's an ecosystem. Every part feeds every other part. The chickens feed the beds feed us. The mulch feeds the soil. The water system runs itself. Once it's set up, the whole thing hums along with maybe an hour of real work a week, sometimes less. I'm not exaggerating that number. I tracked it, and I'm going to show you how I got there. But first let me tell you where I started, because where I started is probably where you are right now. I had a yard. I had ambition. I had a vision of growing my own food and cutting my grocery bill and knowing exactly where my vegetables came from, so I did what everybody does. I went to the garden center. I bought bags of soil, bags of fertilizer, a bunch of seedlings, some tools I didn't really need. I spent probably $300 before I put a single seed in the ground. And that first season I fought every problem you can imagine. Weeds coming back 2 days after I pulled them. Soil drying out so fast I was watering every single day. Bugs destroying my brassicas. Tomatoes splitting. And at the end of it all, I harvested maybe $40 worth of vegetables, if I'm being generous about the pricing. That is not a food system. That is an expensive hobby with a lot of frustration built in. So I started asking a different question. Instead of asking how do I grow more food, I started asking how does nature grow food with nobody helping it? Because forests don't have gardeners. Prairies don't have irrigation systems. Wild systems are insanely productive and they run on zero outside input. What are they doing that I'm not? The answer changed everything. Nature builds soil constantly. It never tills. It never leaves ground bare. It layers organic material on top and lets it break down slowly into the most fertile growing medium on the planet. It cycles nutrients through animals, through insects, through fungi, through bacteria. It captures and holds water through organic matter instead of letting it run off. And it selects for plants that belong in that specific environment instead of fighting to grow things that aren't. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to force my garden to work and started trying to mimic what nature already knows how to do. And that's when everything got easier. Let me walk you through the 4 pillars of this system. I'm going to go deep on each one because I want you to actually understand the why behind every decision, not just copy a list of things to do. The first pillar is the soil system, and this is the foundation of everything. I don't till, and I want to be really clear about why. Because most gardening advice tells you to till, and it is some of the worst advice in the world if you want a low-input productive system. When you till, you destroy the fungal networks in your soil. These networks, mycorrhizal fungi, are the communication and nutrient delivery system of the plant world. Plants plug into these networks and get phosphorus, water, minerals in exchange for sugars. When you run a tiller through your soil, you shred all of that. You start from zero every single season. You also bring dormant weed seeds up to the surface where they germinate, so tilling literally manufactures your weed problem. And you expose your soil to the sun and wind, which dries it out and kills the microbial life that makes it fertile. I stopped tilling 3 years ago, and my soil is genuinely unrecognizable compared to what I started with. It's dark, it's loose, it holds moisture, it's full of worms. I didn't buy any of that. The system built it. What I do instead is deep wood chip mulch. I put down a minimum of 4 inches, often closer to 6 or 8 on new areas. I get wood chips for free or close to free from arborists and tree services, who are happy to dump a load rather than haul it to disposal. You can find them through a service called Chip Drop or just call local tree companies directly. I've never paid more than a small tip for a full truckload. That mulch does 4 things simultaneously. It suppresses weeds by blocking light to the soil surface. It retains moisture by dramatically reducing evaporation. It feeds the soil as it breaks down, building organic matter year after year. And it creates habitat for the earthworms and soil life that do the actual fertility work. The first pillar is deep mulch, and for me that means wood chips. You can get them for free from tree companies, and they are the single best thing you can do for your soil. You lay them down 6 to 8 inches deep on all your beds. That depth will smother most weeds, hold in moisture, and break down over time into incredibly rich soil. In year 1, your beds will be good. In year 2, they'll be great. By year 3, you'll have soil that most gardeners would pay serious money to buy in a bag, and yours cost you nothing except the time to spread it. The second pillar is chickens, and I know some of you are already thinking you don't have room, or your city won't allow it, or it sounds complicated. I want to push back on all of that. I run 4 hens in a suburban backyard. 4 hens in a well-designed rotation are enough to meaningfully fertilize several hundred square feet of growing space. They provide eggs. Right now we're getting 3 to 4 eggs a day, which covers our household almost completely. And they handle a huge portion of my pest control by eating grubs, beetles, slugs, and any insect unfortunate enough to end up in their path. The key to making chickens low input is rotation. You do not want chickens permanently in your garden. You want them cycling through specific areas on a schedule. Here's how mine works. I have movable panels that I use to section off beds that have finished for the season or are in a rest period. The chickens go into that section for 2 to 3 weeks. They scratch the surface, eat the pests and weed seeds, and deposit manure. Then they move to the next section. By the time I come back to plant in a bed the chickens have been through, the fertility is already there. The biology is already activated. I plant directly into that, and the results are noticeably better than beds that didn't get the treatment. The manure from 4 hens is hot and needs a short composting period before going directly onto growing plants. But because I'm rotating them into resting beds rather than active ones, the timing works out naturally. By planting time, the manure has had weeks to mellow and integrate. For feed, I supplement with kitchen scraps, garden waste, and forage from letting them free range in safe areas. My feed costs are lower than what most chicken keepers pay because the system provides so much of what they need. The third pillar is water, and this is the one that probably saves me the most actual time. Before I set up drip irrigation, I was hand watering. That sounds simple, but hand watering a productive garden in summer takes 20 to 30 minutes every single day. That's not nothing. That's 3 to 4 hours a week every week from June through September. And if you miss a day during a heat wave, you can lose plants you've been growing for months. Drip irrigation on a timer eliminated all of that. My setup is not complicated and it was not expensive. I run 1/4-inch drip line from a main 1/2-inch header that connects directly to an outdoor spigot through a basic digital timer. The timer cost about $30. The drip line and emitters cost maybe $60 for my main growing area. Total investment under $100, and I have not dragged a hose to that part of my yard in 2 years. The timer runs the system for 20 to 25 minutes in the early morning. Morning watering is important. It lets foliage dry during the day, which reduces fungal disease pressure. And because I'm running drip rather than overhead spray, I'm delivering water directly to the root zone, not wetting the leaves at all, which is even better for disease prevention and water efficiency. Combined with the wood chip mulch that holds moisture in the soil, my plants are almost never water stressed. I check the beds by pushing a finger a couple inches into the mulch. If it's still damp down there, I skip a cycle. In cooler weather or after rain, the timer just handles it and I barely think about water at all. If you do nothing else from this video, set up drip irrigation with a timer. The time it saves will pay back the cost in the first 2 weeks. The fourth pillar is crop selection, and this is where I think most new growers leave a lot of value on the table. People grow what they know. They grow tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers because those are the vegetables they recognize from the store, and those crops can be great, but they require a lot of attention. They have a relatively narrow harvest window, and most of them give you nothing after the season ends unless you preserve them. I rebuilt my crop list around 3 principles. First, perennials that come back every year with 0 replanting. Second, high caloric or nutritional density per square foot. Third, things that store well without a freezer. For perennials, I grow asparagus, which after the establishment years gives me weeks of free food every spring. I grow Egyptian walking onions that multiply and spread on their own. I grow sorrel, lovage, and several perennial herbs that I never have to replant. These take up permanent space in my beds and produce food every year with nothing from me except an occasional harvest. For high-yield staples, I grow dried beans, sweet potatoes, winter squash, and garlic. These are calorie-dense, they store for months at room temperature, and the yield per square foot is extraordinary once you know what you're doing. One well-managed 10 by 10 bed of dried beans can produce 10 to 15 pounds of dried beans. That's months of protein. From a bed the size of a parking space, garlic is one of the best crops I grow for the input to output ratio. You plant in fall, you do almost nothing over winter. You harvest in summer. The crop stores for 6 to 9 months in a cool, dry place. I now grow enough garlic to supply our household for the entire year plus give away to neighbors. Total work is maybe 4 hours across the entire season, including planting, harvesting and curing. Winter squash stores into February and March without any processing. Sweet potatoes keep for months in a cool basement. Dried beans and grains last year's. When you start thinking about food storage as part of your growing system, you stop chasing fresh harvest windows and start building a pantry that insulates you from the grocery store for months at a time. Now let me talk about the integration. Because each of these pillars is useful on its own, but the real power is in how they connect. The chickens eat the pests and weeds that would otherwise hurt the crops. The chickens fertilize the bed so I don't need to buy inputs. The mulch feeds the soil so the plants grow stronger and need less from me. The drip system keeps plants consistently hydrated so they're more disease resistant and more productive. The crop selection means I'm working with my climate instead of against it, so I'm not constantly fighting failures. Every part makes every other part work better. This is what a system feels like versus what a garden feels like. A garden is a collection of tasks. A system is a collection of relationships. The tasks either feed the relationships or they don't. Once you see it that way, you stop adding complexity and start removing it. I want to give you one more thing before I wrap up, and that's a realistic, honest picture of the timeline. Year 1 is the hardest. You're building something from nothing. The soil isn't there yet. The infrastructure isn't set up. You're learning what works in your specific climate and microclimate. Give yourself permission to not have it figured out in year 1. Focus on getting the mulch down, getting the water system in, making your first crop choices, and learning from what happens. Year 2 is noticeably easier. The soil is starting to respond. You've made your beginner mistakes and you're not making them again. Your systems are in place and you're mostly just managing them rather than building them. Year 3 is when it starts to feel like what I described at the beginning, the hour a week of work. The harvests that come in with very little effort. The compounding returns of soil that keeps getting better without you doing much to it. The perennials producing freely. The chickens running their rotation without you having to think about it. You are building something that gets easier over time. That is the complete opposite of conventional gardening, which tends to stay hard or get harder as you try to scale it up. If you want that system, if you want food that costs you less time, less money, and less dependence on systems you don't control, this channel is built for exactly that. Every video is going to go deep on a specific part of what I've built here. Real numbers, real results. Nothing I haven't tested myself. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Because we're going straight into the no-dig bed build. I'll show you exactly how to set one up from scratch, on any soil, even terrible soil, for under $20. And we'll start building your system from the ground up.